The other day, my wife placed her hand on my chest and told me she loved putting her hand there. I asked if she liked touching my grief. She expressed a puzzled look, indicating she was confused by my remark. I then told her about this classic grief book I'm currently reading called Healing into Life and Death, and I shared more about what the author, Stephen Levine, claims in one of his early chapters. Stephen Levine's book explains that there is a point on the sternum, which is the breastbone, that is sensitive to the touch. It's in the middle lower portion of your sternum. It is stated that if you apply pressure to the area for a while, you'll feel tenderness or pain, and that you will continue to feel this sensation long after your pressure is removed. In essence, you're touching your grief. I was very intrigued with this exercise when I first learned about it. I had to try it. One night, I sat on the couch and used my pointer finger to kind of poke around on my sternum. I felt around for that sensitive point somewhere in my lower mid-chest. Eventually, I found a spot to focus on. I kept the pressure from my finger to the area for what felt like about 2 to 3 minutes. As I pressed, I became more aware of my breath, and as I inhaled, I focused on the pressure felt on my chest. I tried to soften my muscles and take in as much pressure as I could. I guess you could say it was kind of like I was surrendering myself to that pressure. And then once I felt no change in the sensations, I removed my finger. As I sat there that night in the dark, I continued to feel the tenderness from where I had pressed. It wasn't intense, but it was quite noticeable. I thought to myself, is this really grief? Is it possible that everyone would feel grief when they pressed on this tender area on their own sternum? It was hard for me to grasp that concept. I believe that grief is just as unique as our own fingerprint. There's no identical match. So when I read the claim about touching grief, I thought to myself, there's no way. Not everybody can experience this. Well, the night after I did my little touching grief experiment, I slept terribly. I was wide awake from 3 a.m. on. As I laid there, my mind wandered from what time is it to memories of deceased relatives. I couldn't help but wonder about the timing of these memories. Did I touch my grief in a way that brought up unresolved matters? I would say that these memories were neither happy or sad. They were just more remembrances of relatives and their personality characteristics. I'd recalled some of these weird sounds my dad would make with his mouth, completely unintentionally. And then I remembered some of the things my grandmother used to say, like good beer every time she drank a glass of water. In recalling those memories during the middle of the night, I was convinced I had touched my grief. It was like I had pressed a button and opened a doorway to things I hadn't experienced in a long time. I found it quite powerful and quite meaningful. It helped me realize how much I missed these relatives that I was thinking of. But I'll admit, it's a strange concept, touching your grief. And I would completely understand if you're currently asking yourself, why would anyone want to touch their grief? I mean, we know that grief can be quite painful. Wouldn't life be easier just to move on and focus on other things? Well, these questions are common, and I often hear them when I do my grief companioning work. It's a natural response, and it seems to make sense. When something hurts, why pursue more of it? Wouldn't that indicate feeling more hurt and pain? It sort of does and it sort of doesn't. When grief is expressed, it becomes mourning. Mourning is things like talking about your feelings or partaking in ceremony or ritual. Mourning helps with the healing process. In some ways, the more you mourn, the more you heal. So by talking about your loss and sharing the feelings you feel, you're authentically mourning. Mourning doesn't have to be all talk, though. You can write, you can cry. There are several ways to authentically mourn. Backtracking just a bit, I want to point out that by touching your grief, it does help you mourn, and mourning will help you heal. Although this is pretty much a paradox. When you enter into the pain and affirm it or embrace the feeling of it, that pain will begin to shift. There's a quote by Helen Keller that will help to understand this paradox, and it goes like, "The only way to the other side is through." It takes a special person to touch their grief. You have to make time for it, and people are busy. But it's kind of like what my friend who's a chef has said about buying healthy food. He says, "I'd rather pay now than pay later." Regarding your grief, if you deny, suppress, or avoid it, it will take a back seat, but become something like a shadow, always following you around and always still a part of you. Grief just doesn't go away. It will always be there, waiting for a time that is right. In my experience, it remains patient and persistent. It shows up at times when you're in reflection or stillness. And when that moment comes, boom, grief comes at you hard, sounding all alarms. I hope by this point you see the value of touching grief and not avoiding it. By touching grief, you soften the armoring around your heart, helping you feel more love and connection to other people. By touching grief, you feel more healing into life itself. So in that book, Healing into Life and Death, I mentioned at the beginning, Stephen Levine provides a meditation in this chapter called Exploring Grief. He called the meditation, simply, a meditation on grief. I have adapted this meditation into a modern grief experience, and I'd like to share some key points from it here. Think of it as a mini grief meditation, and please take a few moments with me right now to participate in this experience. So if you're multitasking right now, please stop and bring your focus to my words and my words only. If it's safe to do so, please close your eyes and take a few deep breaths with me. Slow the duration of your breath as you bring more awareness to it. Be mindful and intentional. Slowing your breath allows you to bring more air into your lungs, which will help you soften and melt tension away. Slowing your breath helps you relax. Now, gently place your left hand on your sternum. Use a fingertip to explore the bony area. Continue to breathe and bring awareness to the sensations felt on your sternum by your own touch. Find a tender spot in the lower middle area of this bony landmark. Once you've found it, keep your pressure on that spot. Take a deep breath and bring your awareness to where you're pressing. Just feel into it. Feel what's there. This is your grief space. Right now you're touching grief. For whatever that may come up, just try to be with the sensations. If memories come up, let them roll, but also acknowledge the feelings involved. You've now accessed your grief space, and this is sacred and special. This is yours, and only yours. It's intimate, and it's special. In all of its tenderness, your grief space is a doorway to the healing within your heart. The more you allow yourself to be in this sacred space, the more profound your healing will be. Notice how what feels like armoring or guardedness softens. Stay with the feeling. If you need more time here, pause my voice to take as much time as you need. If you're okay and ready to return to daily life, begin to take a deep breath. Slowly start your return to the room. Take another deep breath. Gently and slightly tilt your head from side to side. Now feel your feet. If they're touching something, draw awareness there to the contact being made. Take another deep breath and gently remove your hand from your sternum. When you're ready, open your eyes. Take a moment to gauge how you're now feeling. Notice any new sensations. Take a quick scan of what it currently feels like in your body. Thank you for joining me in this mini grief meditation. By touching your grief, you create a sacred space for more profound healing. I also want to thank you for listening and participating in this episode. If you found this mini meditation useful, let me know. That way I can produce more to help with your grief. My purpose is to help facilitate healing, and I hope this experience helped. If you're in a place where more of my help will help you, I'm available to support you in any way I can. Please visit griefrefuge.com to contact me. Wherever you are right now, and whatever you're going to do next, be well. Take care and talk to you soon.